2 minutes. That is all the time he had left. It took 5 bullets and 20 sword stabs. He was delivering his final message to a world that betrayed him. Let's uncover the truth they've kept hidden for 300 years. Where every tale tells the truth.
Listen to that sound, the hiss of death dancing in your ears. The world knows me as a devil. They call me a monster risen from hell, with a burning beard and eyes that can snatch your very soul. But look at me, really look at me behind this smoke. Do you see a devil, or do you just see a man too tired to keep begging for mercy from a kingdom that discarded him? My name is Edward Teach, but history, with all its lies, prefers to call me Blackbeard. They say I burned ships just to watch men roast. And then there's Charles Johnson, a petty author chasing coins from your fears. He'll tell you a different tale. He needs me to be your nightmare just to sell his books in the grimy taverns of Bristol.
Here he is, the devil of Ocracoke, the man whose very beard brings hell upon the oceans. Behold the madness of Blackbeard!
Pity. He doesn't understand. This terror, these burning fuses under my hat, this isn't madness. It is theater. It is the only language understood by this filthy world. Every monster has a birthplace, and mine was Bristol, a port city smelling of rotten fish, horse dung, and a desperation that never ran dry. I wasn't born with fuses in my beard. I was just a thin boy standing on the docks, staring at the majestic royal ships, their gold gleaming under the sun, while my stomach churned with hunger. My father, I barely remember his face. All that remains is the shadow of a man broken by the weight of taxes and laws that only favored those in white wigs in London. He was a victim of a polite system. He died with clean hands, but an empty plate. That is where I learned my first lesson. In this world, you can be a sheep that dies in silence, or a wolf to be feared. I saw the old sailors with scars on their backs, telling tales of lands beyond the horizon where there were no kings, no masters, only the vast, infinite open sea. Bristol was a prison, and the ocean was the only escape. I didn't go to sea to become a pirate. I went to seek air that didn't smell of oppression. But the sea is a cruel teacher. She gives no freedom for free. She demands you trade your humanity for power. My father's sin was his obedience, and I vow I will never commit that same sin. The year 1702. Queen Anne called, and the ocean answered with blood. The War of the Spanish Succession broke out, and suddenly a dock rat like me was given something more valuable than gold: legality. They called us privateers, a polite name for pirates working for the crown. The kingdom gave me a piece of paper, letter of marque, which said, "Edward Teach, you are authorized to burn, plunder, and kill anyone under the Spanish or French flag." But the war always ends, and soldiers who have grown accustomed to the taste of blood rarely return to being obedient sheep. When the cannons stopped barking and peace was decided at fancy tables in London, we were all just thrown away. The crown took back our legality, but they forgot. They had already taught us how to be wolves, and a wolf won't stop hunting just because its master is full. If the Empire wanted a monster, I would give them one. But I learned quickly, fear is a much cheaper currency than gunpowder. Why fight a bloody battle when a simple look can make a grown man surrender his ship? We traded the king's colors for the black flag. We were no longer their loyal privateers. We were the wolves of the sea. And this was just the beginning of our hunt. When the kingdom severed our hunting license, many of us went home to die in poverty. But not me. My feet carried me to Nassau, a hellhole in the Caribbean, slowly transforming into something extraordinary: the Pirate Republic. There, in the midst of cheap rum aromas and harbor dust, I met Benjamin Hornigold. Hornigold was not merely a robber. He was an ideologist. He stood on the deck of his ship not as a master, but as a leader of free men. He taught me that these seas are wide enough for all of us, if we stop being slaves to another man's flag. "Teach," he said to me one night beneath the stars of Nassau. "This world is ruled by kings who fear the darkness. So become the darkness itself." With Hornigold, I learned that true power lies not in how many cannons you have, but in how much fear you can plant in your enemy's heart before the first sword is drawn. He gave me my first command. He gave me the chance to prove I was no longer an English pawn, but the king of my own fate. Nassau was the seed of a dream, and I was ready to water it with blood. Nassau was the seed of a dream, a place where the outcast could become nobility, and the ordinary sailor could become legend. But that seed needed blood to grow, and I was ready to water it. Together with Hornigold, I began building my name, slowly, one ship at a time, until finally this ocean began to whisper my name with a trembling voice. "Time is up, Edward. This ocean has changed. The king has sent an armada we cannot fight. Take this paper, go home, and sleep in a safe bed. Do not become a martyr for a dead dream." Nassau was supposed to be our paradise, But even paradise has a snake. As dawn broke, I saw him standing on the deck, not with a sword, but with a cursed piece of paper from King George. A pardon, a sweet word for a bitter insult. As he sailed away toward colonial safety, something inside me was buried with him. If a man as great as Hornigold could break, then there is no place for kindness on this sea. I do not need forgiveness from men who never gave me a chance to live. I took command of the ship he left behind. From that day on, I was no one's student. I will not beg for salvation. If the world wants me to be a monster to keep them awake at night, then I will give them a monster they will never forget. Benjamin Hornigold left as a coward, and Edward Teach was reborn as the devil of the seas. I looked into his tired eyes, and I didn't see the lion who taught me how to roar. I only saw an old man terrified of the gallows. Hornigold, the architect of our freedom, chose to kiss the hands of the very men who wanted to hang him. He chose safety over honor. He betrayed Nassau. He betrayed me. The law belongs only to those with the power to enforce it. In the waters of St. Vincent, I found her, La Concorde. And I need a power that can make governors tremble behind their mahogany tables. A majestic, massive French slave ship carrying the thick stench of suffering in her hull. To me, she wasn't just a ship. She was my crown. We surrounded her like wolves encircling livestock. It didn't take long for them to surrender when they saw the darkness we brought. I didn't destroy her. I birthed her anew. I renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge, a cynical tribute to the queen who once paid for my services, then threw me away like trash.
Raise the black flag! Let the world know who the new ruler of this sea is! Huzzah!
I mounted 40 cannons along her deck. I turned this human cargo ship into a slaughter machine, capable of tearing any royal warship to wooden splinters. Every corner of my ship now smells of gunpowder and wild freedom. But a great ship needs an even greater face to lead her. Upon the deck of Queen Anne's Revenge, I ceased to be human. I began weaving lit fuses into my beard. I let the black smoke cloak my face, swallowing the identity of Edward Teach and leaving only a shadow that would haunt every sailor. Blackbeard. This ship is my fortress. This crew is my army. And this ocean is mine to plunder as I please. Bullets are expensive. Patching a ship's hull destroyed by a cannon also takes time. Why fight if you can make your opponent surrender just by looking at your face? In this sea, perception is a weapon sharper than any dagger. I'm not crazy. I am an actor on a very bloody stage.
He had fire in his eyes. Smoke billowed from his head as if he were a demon who had just crawled out of a sulfur crater. No mortal dared look at him.
Let Johnson write that nonsense. That is my goal. I tucked slow-burning cannon fuses under my hat, so the smoke would shroud my face in a mist of death. I wear 6 pistols on my chest. Not because I will fire them all, but so they know I can do it in the blink of an eye. When we approach prey, I stand at the ship's bow, letting the smoke swallow my human figure. I don't shout, I just stare. And you know what happens? Their courage evaporates like dew under the sun. Those merchant captains will drop their weapons before the first shot is fired. They do not surrender to Edward Teach. They surrender to the devil, Blackbeard. Fear is the most stable currency in the Caribbean. With smoke and a little theatrics, I control the trade routes without losing a single crew member. That is the magic of my theater. But remember one thing. Every performance requires proof that the monster is real. And every now and then, I must make sure this sea remains red, so the myth never dies. True power isn't just about destroying ships in the open sea. It's about bringing a city to its knees without landing a single soldier on its shores. May 17, 18. I brought my small fleet to the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. I didn't come for their gold. I came for something far more urgent. We blockaded the port. Every ship that tried to leave or enter, we took, including a vessel carrying the town's nobles. I held them on the deck of Queen Anne's Revenge, letting them smell the gunpowder and sweat of my men. The town was in a panic. They thought I would burn Charleston to the ground.
Please, just take our jewels. Don't let this monster touch our families.
Jewels. I don't need their shiny stones. My crew is dying of disease, and Charleston has exactly what we need. Chests of medicine. I sent a message to the governor. Send the medicine in 2 days, or the heads of these nobles will be sent back to shore in a small boat. For 5 days, the city was paralyzed by fear. They argued on shore, while I enjoyed rum on deck, staring at my cannons pointed right at the heart of their city. Finally, the chests arrived. Not gold, not silver, but mercury and medicines that saved my crew's lives. I released the hostages after taking the silver buttons from their coats as a reminder. I proved to the world Blackbeard could hold civilization hostage, and civilization had no choice but to pay. Amidst the gunpowder storms and the screams of the dead, there was a narrow gap where I tried to be human again. After Charleston, I sailed to the small town of Bath. There, under the quiet North Carolina sky, I met Mary Ormond. She wasn't a king's daughter, just a farmer's daughter, but she looked at me without the fear I usually see in others' eyes. For a moment, my beard didn't smoke. I laid down my pistols and wore clean linen. In front of Governor Eden, I married her. Many said it was just a political charade to gain a foothold on land. But when I was with her, I could forget the stench of the ship's deck and the dried blood on my fingernails.
Edward, the sea will swallow you if you don't stop. Stay here, where the wind only brings the scent of pine, not death.
She was the safe harbor I never had. Mary saw the Edward Teach buried beneath the layers of the Blackbeard myth. For a few months, I tried to live that sweet lie. I tried to be a lawful citizen, a present husband. I gave her lavish gifts from my plunder, hoping those jewels could cover the darkness I brought home to her bed. But the sea is a jealous lover, and the monster I had created within me couldn't be caged in a tiny wooden house. Because behind the calm of Bath, my enemies were gathering in the shadows, and I knew the bloodstains on my hands were too thick to be cleaned by merely a wife's love. Paper is a weapon deadlier than a sword if you know how to use it. To buy time and protection, I walked into Governor Charles Eden's office. I took a knee, swore an empty oath of loyalty to the king, and received the king's pardon. Legally, Blackbeard was dead. All that remained was Edward Teach, the obedient merchant. But in North Carolina, the law is something that can be bought for the right price. Eden was no saint. He was a business partner. I gave him a cut of every discovery I made at sea, and in return, he turned a blind eye to the ships I still plundered under the cover of night. We built a rotten symbiosis over a lavish dining table.
As long as those ships don't fly the British flag, Mr. Teach, I suppose the law can be a little more flexible. Consider it a contribution to the prosperity of our colony.
He loved gold more than his honor. With his signature, I was free to sell my plunder legally in the Bath market. But this piece was just a thin layer of paint over rotting wood. I could feel the hateful glares of honest merchants forced to compete with me. I knew this pardon was only a temporary truce. Eden protected me as long as I was useful to him. But beyond his borders, his neighbors, especially the governor of Virginia, began to catch the scent of this corruption. They wouldn't let a pirate live in peace with a pardon in his pocket. A storm was gathering, and this time it came in the form of a law I couldn't bribe. Many thought the king's pardon had softened my fangs. Even my own men began to forget who they followed. They thought we could sit around drinking rum forever like boring civilians. But authority at sea isn't built on paper. It's built on fresh fear. Night in the stuffy cabin, I sat with my most loyal helmsman, Israel Hands. We laughed, downed rum, and talked about the past. The mood was so warm, so friendly. But under the table, my finger was already pulling the trigger of my pistol. I blew out the candle, letting the darkness swallow us for a moment. And then, bang!
Ah! Captain! My leg! Why did you shoot me?
I relit the candle, staring at his pale, blood-stained face. I wasn't angry with him. I didn't even hate him. I just blew the smoke from the barrel of my pistol and told him, if I don't kill one of you every now and then, you'll forget who I am. It was a lesson, Israel, a reminder to the whole crew that their lives are merely on loan from me. Unprovoked cruelty is the most effective form of control. When you can't predict when the monster will strike, you'll never dare to betray it. Israel Hands lived, limping forever, as a living monument to my absolute authority. The news spread across the deck like wildfire. No one dared to laugh too loudly near me anymore. Blackbeard had returned, and he was far more dangerous than before. While I was arranging my fake retirement in North Carolina, one man in Virginia couldn't sleep soundly. Alexander Spotswood, a governor who viewed the law not as justice, but as a ladder for his ambition. To him, my existence under Governor Eden's protection was an insult, and more importantly, a political opportunity to expand his power.
The law does not stop at territorial borders when there is a monster hiding behind them. If Eden is too weak to clean his own yard, then I will do it. We will not capture Blackbeard. We will exterminate him.
Spotswood did something illegal, without permission from London, without jurisdiction in North Carolina territory. He used his personal money to hire mercenaries and 2 small ships. This conspiracy wasn't about cleansing the sea of crime. It was an invasion, Spotswood knew that as long as I breathed, I was living proof of his peers' corruption. I could feel the nets starting to tighten around my neck. In Ocracoke Inlet, I could smell the scent of betrayal carried by the north wind. The final stage was set, and this time, the players didn't come to negotiate. They came for blood. Dawn at Ocracoke smelled like the end of the world. As the thin fog lifted, I saw Maynard's 2 ships approaching. They thought they had trapped me in these shallow waters. I raised my glass, toasting the death that had long awaited me, then shouted a curse that would haunt their dreams forever. Your blood will be my drink, Maynard. We rained cannons and homemade grenades upon them. I saw their deck turn into a human slaughterhouse. As our ships collided, I leapt onto their deck amidst the billowing smoke of my beard's fuses. I was no longer a man. I was a gunpowder storm. I shot, I slashed, I tore through anything that stood in my path.
Shoot him! Don't let that monster get near! For king and country, take him down, now!
The first bullet pierced my chest, but I kept standing. The second, the third, they hit my body like hot raindrops. Maynard stood before me, his sword clashing with mine. I could see the fear behind his disciplined eyes. I was a legend, refusing to die. 5 bullets lodged in my body, and 20 stab wounds tore my skin. Yet I kept swinging my sword until blood covered my sight. When my knees finally touched the slippery deck, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. Maynard beheaded me, a small trophy for Spotswood's ambition. But as my head was nailed to the mast of his ship, my eyes were still open, staring at the sea that had raised me. They might have killed the man, but they had just given birth to a myth they could never bury. They nailed my head to the bowsprit of Maynard's ship as a warning to anyone who dared defy the law. My body was thrown into the freezing waters of Ocracoke. Legend says it swam around the ship 3 times before finally sinking to look for its head. A theatrical end for a man who lived in the theater. Alexander Spotswood got his fame, Maynard got his promotion, and history got its monster. Charles Johnson wrote down every detail of the brutality I committed, and many that I didn't, into his book. He transformed me from a mere failed mortal into an immortal ghost.
As long as the sea is rough and the darkness is terrifying, the name Blackbeard will always be whispered. I have given him an immortality that no amount of gold could ever provide.
300 years have passed, yet I am still here. I live within the pages of books, on the silver screen, even in the panels of manga and animations in distant lands. They worship my power, they copy my beard, and they are still searching for my buried treasure, even though my greatest treasure was actually my name itself. I am the symbol of humanity's desire to be free, no matter how terrible the price that must be paid. I am no longer Edward Teach. I am an idea, a reminder that behind the neat order of the world, there is always a storm ready to rise. History may have severed my head, but they will never be able to kill the legend of the Devil of the Sea. I am Blackbeard, and I will always haunt your dreams.